All right, so today I wanted to talk about this tweet from Andy No, and it's something I've talked a lot about before, but kind of just confirms things even more than I already thought. Sorry, and it's Minneapolis man on a microphone at the BLM protest says he's not a Democrat or a Republican, he's a revolutionary communist. And again, a lot of people would probably say, "Oh no, it's an isolated." No, this isn't isolated. We have multiple people high up in BLM. And again, this could just be some random guy, but we have one of the BLM founders literally saying we are Marxists. Like again, like if that's not enough to prove my point, I literally don't know what is. Like literally don't know what is if that's not enough um, to get people to admit they're wrong on this one. Now, the reality behind this whole situation, like I brought up a lot before, is when people are going to form worldviews on this kind of stuff, it's entirely based upon um, how much blowback could I receive, right? Most people, when they're willing to decide their morals, their ethics, it's almost entire. It isn't based off actual morals or ethics, but it's entirely based upon how much blowback could I receive for holding said opinion, which is basically I'm just going to side with whoever is the most violent, or at the very least willing to use the most threats of violence to get their way, and who has the most power. And again, people will probably say, "Oh, that's crazy." Well, no, who has the most power in society right now? BLM just demonstrated that um, they can get a man thrown in jail for the rest of his life simply because they threaten to riot. Right? And this is the other thing too. Now that they know this, they're going to do it whenever they want, right? They're going to do it whenever they want, right? And they're going to get their way one way or the other, right? The person gets convicted, basically a modern day lynching. Okay, they don't have to do anything. Person doesn't get convicted, they riot, right? And no one stands up to it. And I know most people disagree with this stuff too. Like I know it, but most people aren't willing to speak up on it. And again, the other thing too is, again, a lot of people they just genuinely don't know what's going on. Like again, they're so heavily propagandized and brainwashed. It's even people that I moderately respect are still fairly brainwashed when it comes to this kind of stuff. Like again, like we just briefly break it down. Again, George Floyd didn't die because he gave a counterfeit bill or no. Again, George Floyd died because he had a lethal dose of fentanyl in his system. It's what the medical examiner said. Medical examiner said there was no significant damage to his neck. Um, Even the prosecution acknowledged that the vast majority of the time, Chauvin's knee was not on his neck; it was on his upper back. George Floyd admitting to not being said he couldn't breathe multiple times prior to even being on the ground. Um, he refused to give this. He could have just gave the cigarettes back and walked away like nothing happened. Didn't do that. He could have just went peacefully. Didn't do that. He could have, even after resisting arrest, he could have just gotten the police car and went away. No, he refused to go. So again, George Floyd died, number one, because he had a lethal dose of fentanyl in his system, and number two, because he passed up multiple opportunities to just de-escalate the situation. And people say, "Oh, show no, no." Even the prosecution's own witnesses acknowledged that Derek Chauvin could have used more force on George Floyd. So he didn't use excessive force, even according to the prosecution's own witnesses. Right? So people are saying, "Oh, well, why would he get convicted?" We got convicted because of the lynch mob. Again, I just went into that, right? Anyway, anyone even asking that, it's like you're not paying attention at all. And the reason why is that it's people think that we live in a free and just society, which isn't true, right? It's not true. Really, honestly, it never has been true. Maybe a long time ago. Um, the reality is that we're only free compared to Tin Pot, dictatorships, basically. Yeah, we're free compared to North Korea. We're free compared to China, not by much. Um, but compared to an ideal standard, we are the furthest thing from that. Right? So again, like I don't know what it's going to take for people to start questioning the norm on this kind of stuff. And as usual, the biggest problem here is that people think that these problems are just magically going to go away. Oh, Chauvin was convicted, therefore, BLM got what they wanted, therefore they'll go away, right? They'll ride off into the sunset. No, that's not the case, right? It's not the case. They've demonstrated very clearly that one way or the other, they're going to riot anyway, right? Did they wait till the trial to riot? Like, this is the thing too. Like, if they at least, like, let's just say they didn't riot at all, like no rioting at all last summer, at least because of the George Floyd situation, and Chauvin was not convicted. If they waited till then to riot, okay, at least I could have a tiny bit of respect for them, right? Still largely would disagree with them because they're still wrong for multiple reasons, but at least they waited until the trial. But the fact that they're rioting pretty well the next day, the night of sometimes, they don't care about justice, right? What is the BLM saying? No justice, no peace. They don't care about justice. If you cared about if you cared at all about justice, you would wait until a trial is done, right? So again, like this is what I've been pointing out for the longest time. They're no better than what they're complaining about, right? The Black Lives Matter argument is, oh well, we're against black people being killed for no reason or basically lynched, right? Okay, you're every bit as bad, right? You're every bit and then some. Not only do they want the police to be lynched, or anyone who disagrees with it a lot of the time, but they're going to riot on top of that. And most of these people who are rioting and they don't care. Right? They don't care. Like, I remember, I think it was last summer, someone went to one of these BLM protests, and they started asking people like basic things. Like, it may literally have even been like, who are they here protesting for? I don't know if it was even that basic, but it was, if it wasn't that basic, it was close. And most of the people didn't even know. Like, they didn't even know basic facts behind this stuff. So they don't care, right? They don't care. They just want to be a part of the mob. And this is the worst thing about society these days, is that most people, well, it may have always been this way, to be honest, but it's just has a lot more potential to do damage these days, I think. In that, again, like I mentioned at the start of the video, most people, when they're deciding on their morals, their ethics, they just blindly side with the mob, right? They just blindly side with the mob. What does the mob think? The mob wants to convict an innocent person. Okay, let's go for it. The mob wants to not even give the innocent person, or regardless of whether they're innocent or not, a fair trial. I mean, this is the other thing too. Like, you can think that Chauvin's guilty. Like, you can think that Chauvin deserves life in prison, but still point out the obvious insanity of rioting and looting prior to the trial. Like, and this is the other thing too. Like, even if you think Chauvin is guilty, you should be every bit as mad and upset with BLM. Because again, like, what was it, like 40 or 50 people got killed in BLM protests last year? Like, was it 3 or 4 in CHOP? Right? More people got killed in the CHOP last year than the BLM, the police shootings. Does anyone care about that? No. So they don't care. Like, and this is the reason. Like I say, they're revolutionary communists, right? And this is what these kind of people always do, right? And this is what the average person is just completely oblivious to, is that what bad people do is, to push their bad intentions, they almost always latch on to a legitimate cause, or at the very least what appears to be a legitimate cause, right? Ending racism. Oh, that's a legitimate cause. I better latch on to that. When in reality, they can call it ending racism, but they're only making racism worse. right? So this is what these people do, right? That this is what look at what the people that support lockdowns do, right? They think what they're doing is saving lives, but the reality is that they're not. They may save a handful of lives by locking down, but you're causing far more harm by locking down than you are by not locking down. And again, it just goes to show that it comes back to, again, people have no critical thinking skills whatsoever, right? And that they're genuinely dumb enough to believe that if the government puts in a policy that saves 10 lives but indirectly kills 100 people, that somehow they're ahead, right? But again, like, it's not ahead, right? You saved the 10, but you caused 100 to die. And that's basically what the lockdowns are doing, right? Um, but anyway, at the end of the day, like, what's it going to take for people to start calling this stuff out? Like, seriously, what's it going to take for people to start calling this out? I really don't get it. They're making it blatantly obvious. So like I said, what's it going to take? I don't know. I don't know. But anyway, that's what I wanted to bring up today. If you liked the video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure you check out those links below. Follow me on those other platforms if you haven't already. If you want to donate, you can do that as well. Again, I would very much appreciate whatever support I can get. But at the very least, just hit that like and subscribe and stay tuned for more.